I want to welcome those of you watching online, and you've joined a great group of men. We're 2 chapters away from finishing 1 Chronicles, and next week we will finish 1 Chronicles. You'll enjoy today's chapter. I'll show you some things you've probably never seen before. We'll finish 1 Chronicles, but instead of going immediately to 2 Chronicles, we're going to go back and do 1 Samuel, which is more of a narrative of Samuel the prophet. I'll show you how he relates to David, last of the prophets, last of the judges, and his life is remarkable. The books that bear his name, we will study 1st and probably 2nd Chronicles, because 2nd Chronicles ends with the death of David, where we are. Or excuse me, thank you. 2 Samuel ends with the death of David, where we are here in 1 Chronicles in the death of David. And then 1st and 2nd Kings opens up with the anointing of Solomon to be king, and 2nd Chronicles, of course, is Solomon as well. So we're going to go back and do 1st and 2nd Samuel. And I think you'll enjoy it. It's a lot easier reading than it is Chronicles. Today's lesson is 1 Chronicles chapter 28. If you have a Bible, go ahead and open up. I'll be reading from the New American Standard Version. There are 30 verses in this, 21 in this chapter, 30 in the next, and I think you'll enjoy our study. Just a really quick review, because I don't know who of you have just caught this study. Maybe you saw something in 1 Chronicles 28 and you Google searched it and this video came up. Just a quick reminder for all the men in the room, this is the last book of the Hebrew Bible. 1st and 2nd Chronicles are one scroll. They just call it Chronicles. Even in the synagogues today, the Jews will read Chronicles. But look on the screen. It's the last book of the Bible. Why? Because Ezra was a contemporary of Malachi and the prophets that were at the very end of the Old Testament. And he writes this as a history for his Jewish people. It's a history book because, remember, the Jews had been taken into Babylonian exile by King Nebuchadnezzar, the wicked king of Babylon. By the way, Babylon today, the area, is what we would call southern Iraq and Iran. That's ancient biblical Babylon. It's where the Tower of Babel was built. King Nebuchadnezzar, a wicked man, but Dr. Darnell would always say, wait, tell him what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He was saved. He was converted. And his testimony, written in his own hand, this murderer, this vicious man, comes to faith in Yahweh. How? He is broken and he goes insane, made to eat grass like a cow. And in fact, eating grass today is called Nebuchadnezzar's disease. And I don't know if you realize this or not, but there are people who struggle with that. They eat grass. They have a specialized unit in Tulsa for people who do that. A long story short, the Jews were taken into Babylonian captivity by Nebuchadnezzar, and then when they're released by Cyrus, who conquers Babylon, Daniel chapter 5, when the hand of God on the wall writes, Mene, Mene, Tekel Upharsin. That Sunday night, October the 13th, 539 BC, Cyrus, first king of Persia, what we call Iran, and the people of Persia call their first king, the people of Iran. He digs a tunnel underneath the great walls of Babylon, conquers Belshazzar, kills Belshazzar, or at least God does. No other person is killed, and the Persian Empire takes hold. And today, as I said before, if you ever go to the British Museum and walk in, you got to buy your tickets to the right. It's in downtown London. But right ahead of you, first thing you see, spotlights on it, is Cyrus's cylinder. It's a scroll, a clay scroll that is etched where Cyrus releases the Jews and all the nations that Nebuchadnezzar had captured. and sends them home. And so the Jews go home. They go home to Jerusalem. And as they're going home, Ezra, who's in the second wave, teaches the people walking home what you're reading in Chronicles. He teaches them about David, King David, which we've studied. And the great theme of 1 Chronicles is why Yahweh's temple was built in Jerusalem. It was the threshing floor of Ornan. And we saw that in our study where David and the kingdom was judged by Yahweh for counting the soldiers of Jerusalem and depending on human effort rather than God. A plague comes, a pandemic. And David goes to the top of the highest place in Jerusalem, where a threshing floor was of a man named Ornan. He was a Gentile man. And David makes a sacrifice, and the plague stops. And that is exactly where the temple is built. And of course, that's also the spot where Abraham had offered his son in the book of Genesis, and God stopped him. It's the spot where David's tabernacle was erected. It's the spot where Solomon builds the temple. And 1,000 years later, after David, it's the spot where Jesus is standing with Pilate and is offered as the sacrifice to take away the sins of the world. And it's the spot where the church begins, because on the steps of the temple leading up to Yahweh's temple, on the southern steps, 5,000 people are baptized on the day of Pentecost. The temple of Solomon, or Yahweh's temple, should have been one of the great wonders of the ancient world. Dedicated by Solomon in 967 BC, it would cost today $1 trillion to build it. About the price of a bathroom in an Air Force plane or something like that. Sorry, I couldn't afford to miss the joke there. Last week we saw the sons of Levi, and the Levites, they were the musicians, they were the servants of the temple, they were the gatekeepers, and then other tribes were the warriors. And look at the numbers. 288, 28,800, and the warriors were 288,000. By the way, interesting story. We were in Napa this past weekend, and they're taking us down to the basement, and this guide was saying, anybody know how many gallons are in this barrel of wine? I said 30. He goes, oh, well, good for you. He said, how many bottles of wine can that make? I said 288. He goes, how did you know that? And he said, do you know what these 288 bottles are called? I said, the angel's number. He said, all the tours I've led, I've never had anybody able to answer that. And then I said, I asked him, do you know what the number 288 means? He goes, no, I don't have a clue. And then I told him what we'd studied in Leviticus. And the guy took off his mic and said, here, you need to guide this group. So I got a second job, Jim. The 5 responsibilities of the Levites: gatekeepers, treasurers, officers, musicians, and of course the priests. That was our study last week. And now, by the way, Jim helped us out last week, and this is a key point. The 288,000 men, they were divisions. This is the first time in history you have a standing army that is divided into divisions. Even Assyria and Babylon would divide them according to families. But we showed you how the tribes were mixed, and Judah had the most men. I didn't send this slide, did I? Okay, I'm sorry, Stan. I'll send it to you. I saw you taking a picture. I'll send it next week. Benaiah was one of the great leaders. We'll talk about Benaiah today. He was one of the mighty men that we talked about last week. And then we drew a parallel to being a Christian soldier. Now we come to chapter 28. Let's begin reading. Any comments before we start reading our text? Anybody? Okay, that was a quick review, but I think you get the picture. All right, as I said, I'll be reading from the New American Standard Version, 1995. Follow along, and I'll go slow enough so you can follow in whatever version you're reading. Verse 1. Now David assembled at Jerusalem all the officials of Israel, the princes of the tribes, that means the heads of the families of the tribes, the commanders of the divisions that serve the king, that's the 288,000 warriors, their commanders, and then the commanders of the thousands and the commanders of the hundreds. They divided the 288,000 down by 1,000, then 100, like we would do also in our divisions in the army. And the overseers of all the property and livestock belonging to the king and his sons, with the officials and the mighty men, even all the valiant men. These valiant men are typically Gentiles, Kerethites, Perethites, under Benaiah's leadership. Okay, now what's interesting is that verse 1 right there. All the officials, the warriors, the commanders, that's what we've studied for the last 4 or 5 weeks. Ezra's given us their names. He's given the divisions. He's done, and we looked at it. Now, David calls them. He's an old man. And look what he says in verse 2. King David rose to his feet and said, "Listen to me, my brethren and my people." By the way, his brethren would be the Judaites. He was from the tribe of Judah. So that's his brethren, and my people are all the other tribes. I had intended to build a permanent home for the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, for the footstool of our God. So I had made preparations to build it. Paul's right there. This Ark of the Covenant is that Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, you know the movie, the ark that is in some government warehouse, according to the movie. This is the ark that Indiana Jones was looking for, and it's the ark that guided Israel. And David says, I desired to prepare a permanent place for Yahweh. What does the word footstool mean? A king would always sit on his throne, and he would have a footstool for his feet. However, you'll read in the Psalms where Yahweh says to his people, the earth is my footstool, not a temple. The universe is my throne. By the way, a little tidbit for you. I'm going to blow your mind on this one. I'm a believer in what's called the electric universe. I think the universe can be explained through electricity. And I believe all the planets and solar systems are connected via currents. And what your entire body is connected electrically. By the way, if you ever want to get healthy, go barefoot in your front yard, because there is electricity from the earth that will flow through your feet throughout your body. Now you say, okay, wait, why is this? I'll leave it at this. I believe the universe is a beautiful picture of the corpus of God. Meaning, your body has neurons, cells, electrical currents. The universe does too. And that's God is throughout it.
That's the way.
Yes.
Along those same lines, you familiar with the God spark?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Ties into your life.
Yeah, it sure does. So let's thank you, Howard. Let's go on. I call it the electric universe. Oh, the God spark. The God spark. And by the way, it's the title of a book I've read it, and I forgot, Howard. It's a scientist who wrote it. But let's go on. What verse are we in? Okay, verse 3. But God said to me, I intended to build a house for him. God said to me, you shall not build a house for my name, because you are a man of war and have shed blood. Yet Yahweh, remember, anytime you see the word Lord in all caps or God in all caps, it's God's, the Creator's personal name. The sound of breath. Let everything that has breath praise Yahweh. Last verse of the Psalms. Yahweh, the God of Israel, chose me from all the house of my father to be king over Israel forever. For he has chosen Judah to be a leader, and in the house of Judah, my father's house, and among the sons of my father, he took pleasure in me to make me king over all Israel. Now let me pause right there and remember that we'll see this in 1 Samuel particularly. The people chose Saul. And Pastor, I think, where is Pastor? I don't see him today. Saul was tall, dark, and handsome. Now that doesn't mean David was short, ugly at all, because the pastor showed me, the Bible even says David was tall and handsome, had beautiful eyes, and so on. But the people loved Saul. Well, he was a Benjamite. The Lord, through Samuel, the prophet, set aside Saul and said, I have chosen David and the house of Judah. And that's what David is saying here in our text. He has chosen Judah, he has chosen me among my father's sons. Now look at verse 5. Of all my sons, the Lord has given me many sons. He has chosen my son Solomon to sit on the throne of the kingdom of Yahweh over Israel. All right, here we go. I'll send you this slide. Verse 5 says, Yahweh has given to David many sons. Now I'm going to give you a little trick on how to remember how many sons David had. He had a bunch. But here's the exact number that are listed in Scripture. 19. Where does the number 19 come into play in the history of Israel? There were 19 kings of the northern kingdom of Israel. How many of them were good? 0. 19 sons of David. Look at his wives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. First 6 sons from different mothers. Then he sees Bathsheba bathing when he should have been out at war with his troops. Ends up having her husband killed at the front line. And with Bathsheba has 4 sons. The 10th son of Solomon, or of David, is Solomon. Now that's important because the number 10 in Scripture is a great symbol of government. Good government. 10 commandments, the laws of nature and of nature's God, and so on. And then, even after Solomon, he had 9 other sons for a total of 19. And the mothers are not named. Yeah, 19 sons of David. Wow. Now, when it says Yahweh chose Solomon.
How many girls do you have?
A bunch. You know what, Jim? I haven't taken a look at how many. And probably like Saul, they're not all named, but he had a lot of girls. A little tidbit, Isaac Newton taught me this. Do you know why a woman has 2 ovaries? Because at creation, and Newton proved this scientifically, twins were normal. After the flood, twins became abnormal. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons population expanded so massively from the garden to the flood. Now here's the thing about Solomon, and we're going to see this later on in our study in 1 and 2 Samuel. In fact, let me go back and show you something about his sons, because it's just really, it's kind of sad. We'll see it in our study of 1 Samuel. Anybody remember his firstborn son, Amnon? What did Amnon do? He raped Tamar. David was extremely angry, but didn't punish him. This guy right here, Daniel, okay, he's the only son of the first 10 that nothing is in Scripture is recorded of him. No acts, nothing. Many people believe he died at birth or at a very young age. And he went by another name in Chronicles as well, but there wasn't room to put that other name. But Absalom was angry with his father for not punishing Amnon. So what does Absalom do? He kills Amnon, his brother. In fact, he calls for a sheep shearing festival and for all the sons of David to come. And it was 2 years after the rape. Absalom kills Amnon. And then what did Absalom do? He rebelled against his dad. And some people believe that Absalom was still very upset that Amnon went unpunished. And by the way, this is a lesson that has forever been with me, particularly when you have child predatory sexual abuse or even sexual predatory abuse of pastors, of women. There's got to be punishment or bitterness grows. And we've seen this in the SBC. I just saw a pastor was arrested yesterday for putting cameras in the girls' baptismal changing rooms. You see that, Stan? I mean, that guy ought to go to prison for decades. Okay, but Absalom rebelled. What happened to Absalom when he rebelled? He's going to the forest of Ephraim. And what happens? His hair gets caught in a big oak tree. In the rebellion, King David had said, hey, listen, don't hurt Absalom. But David's commander of his army, Joab, what does he do? He kills Absalom while he's hanging from the oak tree. Okay, then Adonijah. Toward the end of David's life, what does Adonijah do? He rebels against his dad like Absalom did. This is about 7 years after Absalom. So look at this. David's first son rapes his half-sister Tamar. Daniel, Abigail's son, dies, probably at childbirth. Absalom rebels and is killed by Joab. Adonijah also rebels, and he ends up dying a tragic death. Look, it's just a totally dysfunctional family. Yahweh has chosen Solomon, the son of David's mistress, the woman he stole. So, by the way, Chronicles doesn't really mention any of this.
They only mention the good.
They mention the good. Yeah, and First Samuel mentions the bad.
Now,
Go ahead.
is it, well, we'll see it in
Yeah.
Samuel where, is David kind of on the run from Absalom?
Oh,
Because Absalom is going to try to kill his dad and take over. Well, he does try to make himself king for a while.
No, he does. In fact, we'll see that in 1 Samuel. And Adonijah does too. They want the throne. Yeah. Both of them do. So, I mean, he has his own sons turning on him. So, Yahweh has chosen Solomon. Now, I went through all that to show you this. During the rebellion of Adonijah, Bathsheba comes into the king's room, and basically the wife of the king says, the kingdom's in trouble. So, thanks to ChatGPT, you can see this. King David tells Zadok the high priest, Benaiah, remember the great warrior that killed the lion? Benaiah, the leader of the Kerethites and the Perethites, the mighty men of valor, the Gentiles, he led them. He tells Benaiah, Zadok the high priest, and Nathan the prophet to take his son Solomon to Gihon Springs outside the walls. Let him ride a mule. By the way, riding a mule, does that ring a bell? It's a precursor of Jesus the Messiah. And anoint him king. Now, here's the deal. The people don't know this is being done. This is done in private. And we'll see this in the next chapter, 1 Chronicles 29. So Solomon is anointed basically twice. Okay?
Is that the same spring that Hezekiah.
That's exactly the same spring. 500 years later, 300 years later, 701 BC, Hezekiah builds a wall to hide Gihon Springs, then digs a tunnel to bring water in to save the city from the Assyrian siege. Great point.
Awesome place to walk.
Oh, yeah, you've walked it, haven't you?
Yes, I did.
It's an awesome place. Bill, did you walk it?
I walked part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't wade through the water. But
Yeah, no, right.
they
Yeah.
have 2 tours. You can take, the dry
Right.
one and the wet one.
And frankly, I think you're too big of a guy.
There's places in that
Oh.
tunnel that I felt very, I don't know, I might have been still there.
Yeah. My-
Is that where Peter also healed the man who was
yes.
lame at the pool?
So
Inside the building.
the water runs to the Siloam pool. A lot of things happened there. Now, here's what's interesting about Hezekiah's tunnel. And I think this is so cool. They started digging from both sides of the city. And they met in the middle. What kind of engineering feat is that? Then they took a rock and they inscribed the meeting of the 2 engineering teams. This is 701 BC. You know, those guys were brilliant. By the way, what happened to that rock? It was not found until like 1920 something. And the people that found it took it, and it's now in a national museum in Turkey. And Israel wants it back. All right, let's go on. What verse? 5. Yeah, 6. But let's go back to 5. Of all my sons, Yahweh has given me many sons. He has chosen my son Solomon to sit on the throne of the kingdom of the Lord of Israel. And he said to me, your son Solomon is the one who shall build my house and my courts. For I, Yahweh, have chosen him to be a son to me, and I will be a father to him. Look at verse 7. I will establish his kingdom forever. If. Everybody say if out loud. If. Guys, listen. When you read the Old Testament, if is probably the most important word. Because if you miss if, you miss it. If you're an Old Covenant person, your entire relationship with God is based upon if I, then He. And there's nothing that tightens my back more than to listen to a gospel preacher preach an if-then message. If you, then God. If you tithe, then God will bless. If you obey, then God will make His promises real to you. If you, then He. If, then. Guys, drives me nuts. Now, here's why. Verse 7 and verse 9. In fact, let's read through verse 7, verse 9. I will establish, Yahweh is speaking, Solomon's kingdom forever if he resolutely performs my commandments and my ordinances as is done now. So now in the sight of all Israel, the assembly of Yahweh in the hearing of our God, observe, Solomon, and seek after all the commandments of the Lord your God, so that you may possess the good land and bequeath it to your sons after you forever. By the way, in the new covenant, there's only one command. A new command I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. It's called the royal command. Verse 9. As for you, my son Solomon, know the God of your father and serve Him with a whole heart and a willing mind, for Yahweh searches all hearts and understands every intent of the thoughts. If you seek Him, here you go again, then He will let you find Him. But if you forsake Him, He will reject you forever. Now let me ask you a question. Did the house of Solomon forsake Yahweh? The house of Solomon, did they forsake Yahweh? Yes.
In the end.
In the end, they forsook Yahweh. This is why the house of Solomon, the temple of Jerusalem, Jerusalem itself was destroyed. And the Jews were taken into captivity. And it was in captivity. Okay, Bill Blom, here we go again. In captivity, Yahweh showed them a better way. A better way through faith in Him. And Bill calls it the long engagement that lasts for 500 years until Jesus seals it with the marriage supper of the Lamb in His work. So here, I'll send you this slide. Here is, when you're reading the Old Testament, you come to 1 Chronicles 28 and you come to the anointing of Solomon. It is probably the most beautiful picture of the Old Covenant in the Hebrew Scriptures. And by the way, the Jews never call it the Old Covenant. They call it their covenant. It's not old to them because they don't have a new one. Here's the Old Covenant. If you seek God, He will be found by you. If you obey God, He will bless you. If you forsake God, He will destroy you. Seek, obey, endure, continue. By the way, when you hear some Baptist preachers, it's all this. Seek, obey, endure, continue. Seek, obey, endure, continue. And they measure how well you seek, how well you obey, how well you endure, how well you continue. And everybody's on this measuring stick. And it drives me nuts. Here's the new covenant. He first loved us. He found us. He forgave us. He indwells us, and He keeps us. In the old covenant, you seek God and live. In the new covenant, God sought you and gave you life. Make sense? Man, if you don't understand the difference between the old and the new, between the first Solomon and the second, you miss the teaching of Scripture. And let me show you this before we finish reading the text. Shalomon in Hebrew, in fact, Shalomo, means man of peace. Jerusalem means city of peace. Here you have the King of peace, the man of peace, reigning over the city of peace in a conditional covenant that we call the Old Covenant. And then here comes the Son of God, who is the Prince of Peace, to the same city of peace that had been destroyed due to the unfaithfulness of the Jews. So you have a comparison between Jesus and Solomon. And Jesus Himself says this in Matthew 12, verse 42. Behold, one greater than Solomon is here. Now someone might ask the question, why did He not say one greater than David is here? Because the comparison between Solomon, King of Peace in the Old Covenant, and Jesus the Messiah, Prince of Peace in the Eternal Covenant, is incredible. Solomon was a wise king. Jesus is wisdom itself. Solomon, the son of David. Jesus, the greater son of David. Solomon brought peace to Israel. Jesus brings peace to the world. Solomon received a kingdom. Jesus owns an everlasting kingdom. Solomon had multiple wives. Jesus is perfectly faithful to His bridegroom, us, the church. Solomon fell into idolatry. Jesus is perfectly obedient. Solomon's kingdom divided after him. Jesus' kingdom never ends. One greater than Solomon has come. Tim, I believe the division between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant is perfectly seen in this chapter.
I think it also points out that, the word forever is translated in verses 4, 7, 8, and 9 in one form or another.
Yes.
When you look that up
There's
in
nowhere.
Young's literal, it means age. So
Yes.
when he says that I'll be with Solomon forever, it means I'll be with Solomon as he reigns in this age, in his lifetime, basically. Now, when you look at something like this, it shows that it points out that there are two ages. There's this age that they're living in where all this stuff is going on and that God is going to be with them in this age. When Jesus comes, the age to come breaks into the age that they're now living.
Yeah.
It just comes into their time
Yeah.
so that they can see it coming. But eventually, that old first age passes
Goes
away, leaving only what lasts forever.
Yeah, perfect.
So that the forever is different when applied to Jesus as it is applied to
Yeah,
Solomon.
and Dr. Darnell, our great Hebrew scholar of our past, used to say that all the time. There is no Hebrew word for eternity. It's age upon age. And so what Tim is saying is, during the age in which Israel, the nation, is faithful to Yahweh, during that age, Yahweh is faithful to Israel. But when they go into idolatry, which they did, that was the message of Ezekiel, of Isaiah, of Jeremiah, then Yahweh forsakes them. And the four horsemen of the apocalypse are what comes when Israel forsakes Yahweh. Famine, inflation, pandemic, sudden death, and war. All right? Let's go on.
Would you send
Yeah.
that slide out?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, here's what I'll do. Our email problems have been solved. I will send all the slides out, Ronnie, and I'll remember. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for that, though, Ronnie. I'll send them out, okay? All right, let's go on. Verse 11. 10, sorry. Consider now, for Yahweh has chosen you to build a house for the sanctuary. Be courageous and act. All right, now look at verse 11. Then David gave to his son Solomon the plan of the porch of the temple, its buildings, its storehouses, its upper rooms, its inner rooms, and the room for the mercy seat. By the way, take a look there at verse 11. When David gave to his son Solomon, do you see where it says the plan? Okay, in Hebrew, it's the word works. The works of the porch. Now, I won't get into this, but Isaac Newton, all of his life, studied this verse. He wrote on the temple because he believed that the theory of everything could be understood in the works of the temple. That Yahweh, because he gave the designs to David, gave within that design the secrets of the universe. By the way, it wasn't just Isaac Newton that believed that. The whole basis of the Solomonic guards that guarded the treasures, it's passed down to Masons. They believe that a lot of the secrets of the universe are in the temple.
So, why, if God wouldn't let David build it, why did he give him the plan?
A great question, Stan. And you have stumped me, because I have no idea. His question was, why, if he wouldn't let him build the temple, did he give him the plans? All right, let's go on. Okay, no. You know what? I think you're right. I think the plans were given because David had the ability to obtain the material. Which, by the way, that's a great point, thank you. 3,000 talents of gold, 7,000 talents of silver that David himself donated. Wouldn't you like to be able to donate that, Tom? 3,000, a talent is 75 pounds. Multiply 75 pounds by 3,000, that's how much gold. Multiply 7,000 times 75, that's how much silver. Great point.
You gotta have your blueprints before.
You build. And materials.
How much you're going to have to do. Maybe you had to get permits.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, and I think
Noah had.
yeah, exactly. Howard and then Tim.
And Solomon was wise, but David was a prophet. And all the way through,
There
we see
you go.
God speaking through David.
Yeah.
All sorts of prophecies. And so this,
Yeah.
if you go later on, it says, when the Lord made me understand in writing, his hand upon me, the details of the pattern in
Yeah.
verse 19. So God revealed to him as a prophecy versus Solomon in wisdom.
Good word, Howard. Tim?
That's what I was
gonna
going to
say.
say.
that God showed it to him.
Yes.
Just like he showed the plan for the tabernacle to
Yeah.
Moses.
Excellent. Hey, good word. So, Stan, I would agree with that. Let's go on. Thank you, Ronnie. And the plan that he had in mind for the courts of the house of Yahweh, for all the surrounding rooms, for the storehouses of the house of God, for the storehouses of the dedicated things. And by the way, the word dedicated there, it may be holy in your translation, because holy means to be set apart. Verse 13. Also for the divisions of the priests and the Levites, which we've already read about, for all the work of the service of the house of Yahweh, for all the utensils of service in the house of Yahweh. Verse 14, 15, 16. These are very important verses, as I'll show you in a moment, but let's read them. For the golden utensils, the weight of gold for all the utensils, for every kind of service, for the silver utensils, the weight of silver, for all utensils, for every kind of service, the weight of gold, for the gold lampstands and their golden lamps, with the weight of each lampstand in its lamps, and the weight of silver for the silver lampstands, with the weight of each lampstand and its lamps, according to the use of each lampstand, and the gold by weight for the tables of showbread, for each table, and silver for the silver tables, and the forks, the basins, the pitchers of gold for the golden bowls, with the weight of each bowl, for the silver bowls, with the weight for each bowl, and for the altar of incense, refined gold by weight, and gold for the model of the chariot, even the cherubim that spread out their wings and covered the ark of the covenant, covered with gold. All this, said David, Yahweh made me understand in writing by His own hand upon me. All the details of this pattern. Basically, just what Tim and Howard said, Yahweh showed him, and then David puts it down in writing. It's the plans, and then he gives him the gold and the silver. Now let me show you something that's pretty amazing. All of this gold and silver we just read about, all the utensils, the candelabra, and this was the major one, the Ark of the Covenant, the vessels, the bowls, everything covered in either gold or silver, made of acacia wood, the same wood the ark was made of. Acacia trees were very abundant in Israel, and then covered with precious metals. What you'll find is, 300 years later, when Hezekiah is king, he receives into the palace messengers from Babylon, and he walks them into the treasure houses, maybe because Assyria is the dominant empire of the world, and the Babylonians are just beginning to gain their strength, the Chaldeans. And maybe he wants to partner with them. So he takes them in and shows them the treasures. Hezekiah showed them. Then Nebuchadnezzar seizes them. Great lesson here. Be very, very, very careful. Don't make the mistake of Hezekiah. By the way, Hezekiah's mistake is recorded, I think, in the last 2 chapters of the book of Isaiah, where he takes the messengers in. And then, 114 years later, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, sieges Jerusalem and seizes the articles. And then, in Daniel 5, Belshazzar, the great-grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, profaned them because he brought in the cups, the basins, the candelabra, and for 30 days his generals were drinking wine from the sacred vessels of the temple. And this is when the hand of God appears on the wall. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. And I believe, in fact, I got this, I don't know if it was Spurgeon or Gill or Locke or Newton, but they had brought the candelabra in, which was, this doesn't show it, it was massive. And when you cast light through it, it looks like a measuring, how they used to measure metal, a scale. It looks like that in the shadow. And they said, they believe that the handwriting of God is on the wall where the shadow is cast. And what Yahweh is saying to Belshazzar is, you have been weighed in the balances of God's justice. His holiness on one side, your life on the other. And you have been found wanting. And what does the Bible record for us? The wages of sin is death. Tonight, your very life will be required of you. And remember, all the magi, the wise men of Babylon, couldn't interpret the handwriting. They couldn't understand what it was. and there's reasons for it. We saw it in Daniel. So they bring in this great magi, this prince of Babylon, who was a Jew. And he says, Daniel, the king says, Belshazzar, Daniel, tell me, what does this mean? And Daniel says, O king, no, you don't want me to tell you. No, Daniel, tell me, what does it mean? And so he says, just what I told you. And that night, Belshazzar died. And Persia becomes the third world power. All right, let's finish up. Verse 20. Then David said to his son Solomon, be strong and courageous and act. Do not fear and nor be dismayed. For Yahweh, God, Adonai Yahweh, my Adonai, that means my king, my governor, my prince, is with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you until all the work for the service of the house of Yahweh is finished. Now behold, Solomon, there are divisions of the priests and the Levites for all the service of the house of God, and every willing man of any skill will be with you in all the work for all kinds of service. These are the men we read about in the previous chapters. The officials also and all the people will be entirely at your command. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's open it up for comments, discussion. What are your thoughts? What do you think? Yes, sir, Jim.
Down below,
Yeah.
for years I've always wondered why 7 candles on the middle, and it's supposed to reflect the 7 days of creation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and the Spirit of God hovered on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved, and that's the light. Light is always the Spirit of God. Yeah. Very good. Anybody else? Comment? Yes, sir. Angel.
Can you bring back the sons again?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a great slide, by the way, because
I love this.
yeah, you rarely see the sons of David listed out.
And my question is, one of the sons of David, you said Daniel died, perhaps, right?
Yes, perhaps.
But Bathsheba had another son that died also.
Correct.
So there was actually 5 sons instead of 4, because it was a boy. According to Samuel, it said it was a masculine child. Bathsheba's son, during the adultery.
Okay, now check. Yes. Now I have to double check on that because it's really funny. ChatGPT acts like he's my best friend, and so I'll point out an error, and they'll go, "Oh, you're right, Wade. Good for you. I'll correct this error." And I'm like, "Okay, great." I do believe this is the name.
That was the name?
Yeah, but I'll have to double check. Okay, and then Shobab, Nathan, and Solomon. And right when the baby dies, David says, "You will not return to me, but I will go to you." By the way, this is the reason, Tim. Remember that long discussion we had with Ron Dunn, whether or not babies who die in infancy. You remember that years ago? I mean, Tim and I have been around for a long time. Well, this is that verse, Angel, that I believe the Bible teaches even the children of pagans are in heaven. Because, not because they're innocent. They wouldn't have died if they were innocent. Because the Father has chosen them, the Son has died for them, and the Spirit regenerates them. And that's why, also, my wife disagrees with me on this, but Rochelle, don't edit this out, okay? I believe heaven will be more populated than hell. I do not believe that the grace of God will ever allow His grace to be outnumbered and outmeasured with His judgment. And one of the reasons is I believe all infants who die in infancy are the elect of God.
It's kind of
Stan.
that last sentence says the officials and all the people will obey your command. Well, Israel didn't have a long history of obeying.
No, they did
So, I mean, kind of an interesting.
Great
comment.
point, Stan. If you didn't hear what Stan said, it's kind of interesting that David says to Solomon, all the people will obey. All the people will obey you, and you will obey Yahweh. But Israel doesn't have a long history of obedience. Here's what's interesting, Stan. Lasted 4 years. From 971 BC until 967 BC, the temple was built. It took them 4 years. And in 967, it's dedicated. You read about the dedication in 2 Chronicles. And then things begin to slide after that.
I think that
They did.
It has to do with the building.
For that task.
They're going to do as he commands with the building of the temple.
Agreed.
So that they will follow.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think, Tim, the whole point here is this is the providence of God saying, you will obey me for those 4 years. I will empower you to build the temple. But right after that, things begin to slide. That's why, guys, I know, I'll tell you one story and then we'll go. You know, all the gubernatorial candidates have become really, good friends. And we're down to 2 now. Gittner Drummond's probably the only one, I know I'll talk to, but he's not a friend. Everybody else I'll talk to, call, pray with, and so on. And some of y'all have heard that story of the Madeira wine that I bought at Madeira, so I won't go over it. But we had wine at this event at the Capitol where all the gubernatorial candidates, I told the story, did all that, and then they toasted it. I can't tell you the number of emails from Christian people that were received by the president of OPAC, Bob Lynn, saying, how dare you? How dare you as a Christian toast with wine? And I thought to myself, this is why I'm absolutely delighted doing what I'm doing now. Because you're not in a situation where Christians set these standards up as if you obey them, you'll be blessed. If you disobey them, God will bring judgment. I'm like, guys, just be free. Just be free and love Jesus and love people. I think that's the difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. Now, having said that, my father was the son of an alcoholic. And so I understand the dangers of alcohol. And I would always refrain from someone who struggles. And so maybe they struggle, but here's one thing that I want you to understand. You don't not live by the Spirit because you are afraid that you're going to offend a weaker brother. And here's why. You don't understand the text of the weaker brother. If you live trying to walk on eggshells not to offend Christians. Why? Because ask someone who's offended this question. Are you weak? Nobody offended will ever tell you they're weak. They'll tell you they're a better Christian than you are. And so when I ask that, and I used to do this, Tom, and that's probably why I will offend people, but I'm never offended. People would say, wait, I'm offended that you went to that movie or that you drank this wine or you did this. I'm like, are you my weaker brother? No, I'm just telling you to be a good Christian, you need to not do that. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it even more. Why? Because you've told me that in your spiritual strength you're offended. And I need to drive you to a place of understanding that the only way you can live life is not worry about offending people, because Jesus Christ has taken all your offenses against Him away, and therefore you just live unoffended. Food for thought. It may not make sense, but man, it'll set you free. Yes, sir. Last question.
First recorded miracle that Jesus made, was it wine, fermented wine at a wedding? It wasn't just grape juice, right?
It has to be fermented wine.
Good.
Do you know why it has to be fermented wine?
Yeah.
Have you ever tasted grape juice?
Yes.
If you've had a little bit of wine and then you get grape juice, Tim, you're not going to say, man, you saved the best wine till last. Because grape juice does not taste like wine. Would you agree, Tim?
That's true. That's true. And they would have understood what good wine was.
Who said it tastes a lot better?
I did.
Well, that's okay.
May be true.
No, Warren. Good for you. Don't ever change. Don't ever change. But don't force me to change either. All right, I know you won't. God bless you. See you next week.